little nervous when they tell you you're going to be the keynote speaker because that puts great responsibility on you to say something that you might want to listen to. So we're going to attempt to do that. Since I've been doing this for 39 years, that's accurate. I'm not a high-tech person, but I have some talented young people that help me with these things. We work now all over the world. We did a project in Serbia recently. Our farmer client base has moved into Minnesota and North Dakota. And we're a small company. My partner is a very talented weed scientist who lives in Central Illinois named Karen Morgan. And we're, by law in our company, or by policy, we are truly independent. We do not get revenue from selling any inputs or products. We don't sell herbicides or seeds or weed killers or micronutrients or anything. We also don't endorse, we just test. When they tell you you've been at it for 39 years, what they really tell you is you're valuable now because you made a lot of terribly expensive mistakes on somebody else's farm, and then I can tell you not to do that. That's what I do. I spend my summer screwing things up, and then I go around in the winter, try to look smart, and I say, hey, don't do that. We tried it, and something happens. So that's who we are. My technology will cooperate here. Our company's motto is simple: helping you be your own best agronomist. We're committed to the idea that we can teach you as much agronomy as you can stand. That makes you a better observer, and you will always be the best agronomist on your own farm for the simple reason that it's your money on the line and you're there every day. That makes you the most dedicated observer available. So we do a lot of things that people would expect us to. We write fertilizer prescriptions, we run a soil testing business, we write weed control programs, we do all of those things. But we'll also teach a client to do that themselves if they're so inclined. And we try to reach a happy medium where we teach the client as much as they can stand so they can make decisions every day with or without us, and at the same time serve as a backstop when they get into the tough things. We're blessed with over 200 farm clients in multiple states who are willing to test almost everything we ask them. We spoke to our Jacksonville, Illinois agronomy group last week, did a training session with them, and they actually came out before I had a chance to mention that there were some things I'd like them to try next year. They asked me if I had a list of things that they'd like them to try. And we throw some pretty off-the-wall stuff at them. When you ask a farmer to raise corn after corn and apply strips with absolutely no nitrogen, sometimes they look at you funny. But they'll do it because that's the most important. Anytime you run a nitrogen rate study, the most important rate out there is 0, because the one thing we don't do a good job of identifying is how many bushels will the field give us before we start buying nitrogen. So those are the kind of things that we test and we teach. We work through grower agronomy groups, which is a group of 15 to 20 farmers in an area. We get together a couple times a year, and we teach them to identify as many things as we can. From working with those groups, we've developed some online applications to help you identify issues in your own fields. So we're also, ourselves and our farmer clients are the people that are putting together this project, which will launch in 2018. There's always concern about whose data, what data, who owns it, and all of that. That's never been my concern. My big concern is that big data and correlations are never going to answer the questions that we need to answer. What you need to know is if you spend more money on seed or less money on seed, is it going to make you money? If you put more fertilizer on or less fertilizer on, which decisions do you make you money? One cold fact in agronomy that we can never escape is that everything we do in a field costs money. Correct? But not doing it costs money too. You work with a Ukrainian farmer whose planter's doing such a horrible job, it makes you cry to look at it. And he says, I can't afford a new planter now. What is it costing you not to get it? Everything we do costs money. Buying a dryer and drying corn costs money. What is it costing you if you're not doing it? Those are the questions that we answer. And I agree with Dr. Knessa. There's no silver bullets in lead science. There's no silver bullets in agronomy. There's no such thing as agronomists with all the answers. If there is, it's in the fiction section with Sasquatch and sugar plum fairies and unicorns. All we do is ask a lot of questions. And then we try to teach our farmer clients the ability to answer as many of those questions on their own farm as they can without us. So this is our dilemma. You have all these places you can spend time and money. And you have less time and money to spend. I put a slide up about 5 years ago at a meeting in North Dakota, and a gentleman who was there called me and reminded me about that slide in August. He said, I was thinking about you the other day And I said, why? And he said, you showed me a slide a couple of years ago and said two things on it. One of them is have a plan to live on $3 corn in your pocket at all times, and the other one was be careful with the dicamba beans because somebody's going to get burned either way. And he's like, you're pretty smart. I said, no, I'm not. It didn't take a lot of skill to see both of those things coming. What we do, we test, we measure, and we report. We don't endorse. We test the product. If it works, we report it. And then we try to figure out why it works. Because this is a very local decision. You do not have the money to cover all of these. You have to pick and choose. Each one of these is a problem, and each one of these is going to be solved by a tool. Many people think being an agronomist is picking the right tool to solve the problem. That's step 2. Step 1 is picking the problem that has to be solved now with your limited resources, and which ones can wait till tomorrow. Because when corn's $3.30, you're solving critical problems now, and you're pushing something back there. That's the reality. I survived the 80s in ag business. Most brutal lessons I ever had in my life, but they stick with you. I've also been married for over 30 years to a red-haired German accountant. And she would kid me all the time. This agronomy stuff's great, John, but until you bring it back to money in the bank, you're wasting everybody's time. So that's what we look at. How often is a decision for money in the bank? Which one of these are we going to solve? Which tool are we going to solve? That's what good agronomy is about. Now, if I ask you to be honest with me and ask you a simple question, have you ever in your lifetime driven a nail with something other than a hammer? Log, brick, crescent wrenches are common. Pipe wrench. A hammer would work better, wouldn't it? But what's the other side of that equation? I can drive that nail with a $20 steel hammer or with a $500 gold hammer. Which one is the best choice? And so that's what we do. We try to find the critical issue that we need to solve. We try to find the correct tool and the most economic tool to solve it. And then we see what pops up to the top of the list next. So we systematically work through this, but you've got to have a starting point. You can't just... The downside of farming and the downside of agronomy is you only get 45 or so at-bats in this game. Can you imagine a Major League Baseball player trying to perfect their trade in the batter's box when their entire career is 45 at-bats? So we have to be quick. We have to learn how to pick and choose where we're going to attack. And so we reduce things into information. What do you do? And actually, what do you do on which farm? Most of your farming operations today are large enough that you're facing different issues on different pieces of land. Some driven by soil, some driven by availability of irrigation or not, some driven by your own farming practices. This business, the business of good agronomy, is a ridiculously local process. 35 years ago, I could stand in front of the group, I could list 3 or 4 things maybe everybody in the room could do that would give them an increase in yield. I cannot do that to you. Because your system is driven by your own needs. So we have some golden rules. Almost anything will work somewhere. Just random chance tells you if you do it in enough places, it's going to give you a positive result. We met a guy a few years ago in North Dakota was selling pregnant dairy cow urine in a barrel. And I immediately had some questions. How do I verify that in fact the cow was pregnant when she peed in the barrel? That was my first question. But he was selling pregnant dairy cow urine in a barrel. You spray it on your crops and it increases your yield. I never quite bought into what he was selling, but I decided if I needed a salesman, this would happen. Absolutely nothing works everywhere. In 39 years of trying, I haven't found anything that generates a universal yield response, other than planting seed at all. And so, as soon as somebody says, we've got this treatment, it works everywhere, you use it, just put it on. Run. Burn, run the other way. Nothing's that good. If we're winning 70% of the time, we feel like we're at a curve. And in reality, that's about as good as we get. Anytime we do something that's the most profitable choice 100% of the time, we immediately back up and say, what did we do wrong? And I'm going to show you some examples of that today. So, almost anything will work somewhere, absolutely nothing works everywhere. If you're looking at corn, it's got to solve the problem that took your last 20 bushels. How many bushels will modern hybrids produce? Well, since it's been done, we now know that 500 is possible. Is 6? Probably. We don't know it because we haven't been there. But 500's been done. And once something happens, you get past impossible and you start figuring out how do I manage this. Today's harvest can produce 500 bushels. But our interest is, how did you lose your last 20? Okay. We're building a system to manage information to answer that question on the front end and then measure the results on the back. So, corn management lessons from 2017, soybeans from 2017. Some different things that we were working on. Okay? In corn, where's your last 20? If you harvest 240 bushels, you can accurately assume that at some point in that life, that plant or that field is going to do 260. And your most critical issue is how do you give up the last 20? Because the last 20 out is the easiest 20 to get back. I'm interested in how I went from 400 to 380, but that doesn't solve my immediate problem. If I'm harvesting 240, I want to know how I dropped from 240 to 260. Because those are the bushels I have a better chance of putting back in the system. So we count. And this can get complicated, but my father taught me a long time ago. Reduce everything in an equation. Anytime you're in a situation, you can generate an equation that actually tells you how you got it. And so break it down and let that equation tell you where to go. And so we do. We started on this thinking about 30 years ago, and since then we've broken down each crop that we work with into a mathematical formula. And the mathematical formula is simple. 2 plus 2 equals 4. If I don't like the result over here, I have to change something over here. If the equation's accurate and I don't like what I have on the right-hand side of the equation, I've got to change something on the left side. If I keep taking 2 plus 2, I'm going to keep getting 4, correct? I understand maybe not in Washington, D.C. I think they can take 2 plus 2 and come up with like 17 billion. But that's not the case. They don't actually come up with 17 billion. They get 4 and then they get the other 16 point something billion. But if the equation's good and you don't like the outcome, you got to change something on the left side. Now, there's a lot of things you can turn into an equation. You might not think so. We had a tornado in Iowa City about 10 years ago. Passed pretty close to my house, took some tree down. I was lucky I didn't get hit as hard as a lot of people. Probably a good thing because I was standing on my deck listening to it. I was testing a theory. I used to work in Southwest Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. And they said at night, you can hear the tornado, but you can't see it. And if you can't detect the bearing change, you need to duck because it's coming right at you. You listen, and if the tornado's either moving right to left or right, you're okay. But if you can't tell if it's moving left to right or right to left, you probably ought to get underneath something heavy. So I'm standing on my deck trying to determine if I can hear the tornado, but I can't see it. It's dark. And I determined pretty quickly that it was moving basically right to left. I said, okay, it's going fast and stopping me on the deck. Then I heard what sounded like people shuffling cards. And it took me a while to figure out what that was, but it's actually shingles peeling off the roofs. It sounds like somebody shuffling a deck of cards. Everybody says, what's a tornado sound like? Well, it sounds like a freight train. Sounded like a really big air blower and somebody shuffling cards. That's my first experience. But in the process, I had some trees go down. So you get out the chainsaw, you're in the backyard. I was lucky the tornado hit when my son was in between boot camp and Marine Infantry School, so he was home. So we're in the backyard, and we're cleaning up the down trees. We're pretty well done, and my neighbor shows up. Nice guy, my neighbor. Genius. This guy's scary smart. He's got a PhD in nuclear physics and an MD in nuclear medicine. He calculates how much of what size piece of radioactive material they put inside the tumor to kill it from the inside out. But he's a little challenged in the basic stuff. How can somebody have a PhD in nuclear physics and not understand things like gravity and leverage and things like that? He was challenged in that. He comes by and I'm finishing up. We're getting ready to pile up some logs on the wood pile and put the chainsaw away. He goes, can I borrow your chainsaw? I immediately constructed an equation. And this is what I came up with. PhD/MD plus CS. PhD is my brilliant but mechanically challenged neighbor, and CS is chainsaw. What do you think I have over here? Well, I have an associate that's in the property and casualty insurance, and he would call this PI plus PD, which is personal injury and property damage. Now, that's not an acceptable result. What's that mean? I have to change something over here, though. If I don't like what's here and the equation is valid, I have to modify here. Now, he's a nice guy. I don't want to hurt his feelings. And say, look, you pick up a chainsaw and I'm going to be calling an ambulance. That wouldn't be polite. But you gotta think quickly. So I'm like, my chainsaw is pretty old, it's hard to start, it can really, really frustrate you. I'll just send Sean, who's my son, I'll send Sean along with you. You point, he'll cut. And you'll get your work done. So I modified the equation over here. I added one more part. PhD, MD, chainsaw, ES, eldest son, equals WD and ND, where WD and ND is the worst out of when he's dead. Now that's a humorous exercise, but it demonstrates there are equations in places where you haven't seen them. And one of them is in a cornfield and one of them is in a So we construct an equation to make a yield, and then we attack. But if you do this, it helps you think. You do not have the time, the money, or the years in your farming career to randomly just start throwing things in the field to see which one's going to give you a higher yield. You've got to target your approach. And sometimes some of the things that we pick are contrary to some of the other things we pick. I'm going to give you an example of that later. One of the things we can chase for high yields in the cornfield is actually negative against one of the other things that effectively help us get high yields. So I'm going to give you a hint. You need a construction equation that equals yield, and we like uppercase y better than lowercase y just because big yields are more fun. Okay? I'm only going to give you two things over here, and you multiply. One thing times another equals how much you can pay for. What will you fill in? In the very basic math. Kernel number per acre times kernel weight. Now even that has a mistake in it. We evaluate hybrids in this country specifically on unit of yield per unit of area. I was reading some Chinese research where they do what they call PYE, which is plant yield efficiency. They evaluate the variety based on its ability to produce product per plant. Then they modify that to go on per unit of area. Sometimes we miss some things when we only evaluate on yield per unit of area. So number of kernels per acre times what they weigh. And one confusion here that happens a lot, kernel weight and test weight are not the same. Kernel weight is how many kernels do you have to pile up to get to 56 pounds. When I started, we used 90,000 kernels as a normal corn yield. This year, we measured cornfields that produced a 56-pound bushel on 55,800 kernels. That's a new record. Up until this year, my lowest number was 63,000. So kernel weight has become more important to us recently. Today's hybrids can produce very high yields, and they're more dependent on producing a larger portion of that yield with kernel weight as opposed to kernel number. Now, kernel weight is the bottom. Kernel number is broken down into all these things. Plant count, ear count, and this chart also shows you the stage of growth where we have the best opportunity to modify that number. When we're trying to raise a corn yield, we're not just trying to raise a corn yield, we're looking specifically at one of these areas. And the reason we're doing that is the field told us to. We've got a late season online application where you count rows, you count girth, you count ears, and it basically spits back feedback that tells you, should you be chasing kernel number? Should you be chasing kernel weight? Should you be chasing kernel number early or later? What time of the year did that plant give up that last 20 bushels that you didn't get? That's where we're at. Now, when I started my career, we did some numbers in 2008 just for fun because it was my 30th year. And I was still in 2008, and today I'm working with farmers and sons of farmers that I worked with when I first started as a rookie in 1978. And so 2008, one of them in Central Illinois said, you've been working in this neighborhood for 30 years, what's different? So that became an exercise we looked at. And we figured out pretty quickly that we basically had added about 100 bushels to yields in Central Illinois from 2078 to 2000. 30 years we gained 100 bushels. Almost all of that came in the area of kernel count per acre, and almost all of it came right here, pushing populations and improving planting systems. And so we kind of kept following that road, and because of that, after 2008, we made some mistakes. We started looking at fixed ear varieties, 44,000 plants in a 20-inch system, irrigated with hogmanure, and figured we're going to consistently hit 300 bushel yields that way, and we hit a wall. And then after that, a group out of Adel, Iowa, started talking about 12 and 15-inch corn and 50,000 plants per year. And then that got really quiet. They hit a wall. And the wall they hit is plant nutrition. One of the things that we're working very hard on right now, trying to teach our customers and clients, is the concept of allocating resources within the field. You build corn and you build soybeans out of water, sunshine, and list of minerals, correct? What do you build stalks and stems and leaves out of? Water, sunshine, and list of minerals. The same water, sunshine, and list of minerals. And so what we've learned in some situations, we don't want to allocate too much of our resource base to things that we don't get to sell. Very high population corn, very high population beans have a place, but not everywhere. And the art becomes, which place do you do well? So in some of our farms, we're still chasing kernel count, ear count, and plant count. And a lot of farms, we're not chasing kernel. So in a lot of fields, especially very high yielding fields, kernel weight has become important to us. And again, it's not tested. I've seen bushels where I had 68, 69,000 kernels would give me a 56-pound bushel, and the test weight would tell me that it was 59 pounds. And I can show you fields where we had 90-some thousand kernels to get to a 56-pound bushel. And the test weight would tell me it was 59 pounds. We don't spend a lot of time on test weight because as a diagnostic tool, it doesn't give us a lot of work. But kernel weight does. Kernel weight tells us, did we run out of gas at the end? And we're also picking up a trend. When we're looking at 260 and 270 bushel corn yields, that yield is more dependent on kernel weight than kernel number. How do you get maximum kernel weight? You have to keep things alive. The other thing we find, these two things are kind of contradictory. If I'm chasing maximum kernel weight, in a lot of cases I shouldn't be pushing sky-high populations. Because if I plant thicker, my probability of the plant dying prematurely is greater. So those are the kind of things that we're working with. So every slide I have says something about rethinking, because since 1978 when I started, I do nothing but rethink. We have two philosophies in our business. One of them is find the best way to do it for the lowest cost with the highest probability or the highest frequency of a profitable response. That's what we chase. The second philosophy we have is we never assume that what we're doing is going to last more than a few years before we have to reevaluate it and find a better way. So, modern hybrids can raise 9 to 10 bushels per thousand seeds. Yes, because there's a couple people in the country that are doing it. When we started getting our yields up to around 200 to 250 in 2008, we realized we're only producing 6 to 7 bushels per thousand seeds. That was actually lower than we started in 78. So our yields went up, but our bushels per thousand seeds went down. Our question became, these two gentlemen can raise 9 to 10 bushels per thousand seeds and 50,000 plant 500 bushel environment. Is there a reason why we can't raise 9 to 10 bushels in a 260 bushel environment than it was? So we started challenging. And we learned some very important things. So in some fields, we are shifting our focus from ear count to ear size. And ear size is how much weight there is. And a lot of ear size right now is kernel. There's a big difference in your yield if it only takes 65,000 of your kernels to make 56 pounds and you can get paid for it, than if it takes 90,000. Kernel weight, early death, phantom yield loss, these are all things that suddenly became interesting to us. But the biggest one is resource allocation. When we started pushing 40, 45, and 50,000 plants, what we learned very quickly is it's hard to feed that many extra stalks and all those extra leaves and roots and still have enough to keep the things alive and put grain in. You only have so many resources. You have to be very smart in where you invest them. And it's not just money. Sometimes it's potassium, sometimes it's water, sometimes it's sunlight. So, final stages of growth became important to us. R5 corn, which is dead, 50% of the kernels show a visible dent. R6, which is maturity, that kernel's now done. How much of your yield comes in between R5, which is dead, and R6, which is maturity? With modern hybrids in a very high yield environment, that number appears to be in the neighborhood of 40 to 45%. One of the things you learn when you work overseas is that we speak English, but we've done horrible things to that language. Until you listen to an Englishman speak English, that's worse. And if you really want to see you really want to have trouble understanding English, my family's Irish. We went back there this summer to visit our old home country. They're not as bad as the Scots. If you can understand a Scotsman speaking English, you should have been a linguist. But what Americans, Midwestern Americans, we don't have much of an accent. We don't do much to the language except for one thing. We use phrases where the words in that phrase give you absolutely no indication of how that phrase is being used or what it means. Now, if you can tell me what that is, your English teacher from high school would literally jump for joy. What are those called? There's a lot of disappointed English teachers in Nebraska. It's called an idiom. What's the definition of an idiom? It's a phrase where the words do not give you any indication of how that phrase is being used. Like if I say that poor guy bought the farm, you know there was no real estate transaction involved, or at least a very small. When you work in a foreign country where they speak English as a second language, they do not teach idioms to Ukrainians who are learning to speak English. And so when I make a statement, every now and again, the room just goes quiet. And I finished one project. The first project was a one-year project. And then they started outlining what they wanted us to do for the second project. And all of a sudden, this thing became huge. We're talking about a lot of time, a lot of man hours, a lot of money. And I said, man, you got to swing for the fence. I got no response whatsoever. Finally, a young man that works with me and helps me with my interpretations and stuff, he did his undergrad at Murray State and his graduate work in soil microbiology at UCLA. He speaks excellent English. But in his English as a second language, accented by his Ukrainian heritage, he says, John, what are we swinging? And at what fence? And why? So I had a big choice like this. I'm looking at R5 corn and say, okay, at this point, 50% or 40% of your yield's still on the table. They're literally looking around for a table. So we say things like that, but this is important. Up to 40% of your final kernel weight comes in between R5 and R6, which is typically 18 to 22 days. And you can do that math in your head. I see a couple of people taking pictures of the screen. You folks have the slides, correct? Yes. Can you make a PDF up available? Okay.
We'll be on the website.
All right, the PDF of all these will be on the website if you want to save yourself the trouble of taking pictures of it. But if you want to take pictures, that's cool too. We don't keep a lot of secrets in our company. Pretty much everything we do gets real public really fast, and that's just the way the world works. We're okay with that. Your last 18 to 22 days, if I hit the median there, I'm going to look at 20 days. 40% of your yield comes into your field in the last plus or minus 20 days. So you planted 40,000 or 36,000 trying to maximize your ear count, and a large number of your plants died 10 days before they black. How did we end up with 90,000 kernels in the bushel being normal? We had a whole lot of fields that were dying before they finished their job. I don't know that today's hybrids produce any heavier kernels than they did 30, 40 years ago when I started. It may just be that we're doing a far better job of actually keeping them alive until they finish their job. And that's the one thing the last couple of years we've been watching really close. When we're picking a really high yielding field, 250, 60, 70, and other neighbors in the area are picking 220s and 30s, where we find the difference is almost exclusively kernel. Did we keep it alive till it had a chance to finish its job? And this is where population can be contrary. If I push populations, I reduce my nutrient base. I've got plants that aren't as well fed, they're crowding for sunlight, they get a little weaker, you get more disease jumping on them, they die. Now, there's also an interaction we've been watching with row cover. We do a lot of pop-up fertilizers. We have a lot of clients who use them, a lot of clients that don't. We don't take the position that they're a good idea or they're a bad idea. They're a tool to solve a specific problem. But all a pop-up fertilizer can do for you is initiate a bigger ear. And by our measurements and some other people's measurements, that ear increase, or the size of that ear's potential is about 10% better when you use a row fertilizer. That doesn't mean you're going to get a 10% bigger yield. You got to deliver the potassium and the nitrogen in July, and you got to keep the thing alive till it's done. The other thing we measure pretty consistently is that if we push populations, especially in the 30-inch row, past a critical number, those plants, because of crowding, are going to give up 10% of their ear size. So now I'm all of a sudden in a situation, I put on a row fertilizer and increase my ear thickness by 10%, and I planted 36,000, which decreased my ear size by 10%. So what did I do? It's really big, it's really pretty, it's really green, it yields exactly the same, but I bought 3,000 extra seeds and spent $17 an acre on row. So the point we're trying to make is, you kind of got to pick a target. Are you chasing kernel weight, or are you chasing ear count and kernel number in high populations? Because they don't necessarily go well. Now, if it's a rented farm, we got soil nutritional problems, we don't have adequate nutrients in the soil. In some soils, we got excellent soil test levels, but the mobility issues we can't overcome. Then we tend to go more to a flexier variety and pull the population down and try and maximize growth. If I've got excellent resources, we've got some clients that have dark, beautiful prairie siltwell river bottoms that have irrigators on them, and they've had enough hog manure on them in the last 20 years that you don't need to put hog manure there anymore. There, we'll probably push the populations. But when you push it to the point where you start having plants die early, it's pretty easy to give up 10 to 20% at the back end because you push an extra 10% on the front end. So you have to analyze your own fields, look at where your holes are, and try and figure out which one you're going to chase, because we recommend you don't chase both. If a plant dies prematurely by 10 days, you're probably leaving somewhere between 17 and 22% of your yield on the table. So this is a triangular relationship that we've been working very hard on, and we work on this in corn, soybeans, wheat, grain, soybean, those types of things. Population versus nutrition versus space. When plants get crowded, they react negatively and they reduce their ear space. When soybeans get crowded, they reduce their growth habit. They crop pods on the ground. They do all kinds of negative things. And so those things become important. And the last few years, we're seeing some very interesting stuff as we try and balance this. We started writing planter prescriptions for variable rate seeding about 10 years ago. We actually felt like we were good enough to do it on a commercial basis about 4 years ago. It actually took us 6 years of trial and error to get to where we were comfortable enough that we thought that that was something we could actually put a fee on. One of the things we do when we check populations is we take whatever we think for that soil and that yield target and that environment, and then we challenge it and down 10%. And then we do a very simple measurement. How many times did the 10% increase in the seeding rate make us money? How many times did the 10% decrease in the seeding rate make us money? If we're right, we think we'll be right. Our population should be most profitable 70% of the time, and we should lose to going high versus low an equal number of times. The first few years, what we found is we never lost to going high. And never is a very powerful word in agronomy, because never should not ever happen. If 100% of your trials where you increase population show no yield response or no increase in profit, what did you just learn? You were too high to start. You have to break it on the low side and break it on the high side to understand where you're at. We ran a whole bunch of trials on corn populations this year, a whole bunch of trials on soybean population. And for the most part, I can tell you that in one area, we achieved 100% failure. And I'll tell you what I mean in a couple of minutes. This is one of our clients. This is McQuan, Illinois. If you're not familiar with McQuan, if you know where Galesburg, Illinois, and Peoria, Illinois is, and kind of go draw a line between the two, you're going to come close to passing through McQuan. Not exactly close. Western Illinois, dark prairie siltwell, good soil. This is a strip tilling operation. They do place fertilizer under the row, and then they plant that thing on top. Okay. 2 hybrids in a population trial. Seeding rates of 28,000, 32, 36, and 40. There is a significant failure in this test. What is it? As scary as it was to go 28,000 when we're shooting for 300 bushels, we did not go low enough. Because I can't tell you if I would have gotten a bigger yield at 26 or 24 or a lower yield. I can assume, but I don't know that, because we didn't break it on the bottom side. And so what we're building on our information side is using off-the-shelf software. We do 100% of our AgGIS work with a program called QGIS from QGIS.org. It's free. You can go home tonight and download exactly the program and we do everything we do. We also have kind of a personal goal that we want to run a Microsoft free business. So we're doing most of our work now is done on a Linux-based computer using LibreOffice spreadsheet, a free database, and QGIS, which is a free geographic information system that is every bit as capable as anything you can buy for a whole lot. Actually more capable. One guy said, well, is it user-friendly and intuitive? No. Is there a GIS program out there that is user-friendly and intuitive? No. You can have one you paid a lot of money for that's not user-friendly and not intuitive, and you just got to tough it out and learn how to use it, or you can have one you get for free and don't have to pay an annual maintenance fee on it that's not user-friendly and not intuitive, and you have to tough it out and learn how to use it. But the one thing we can do is we can write scripts that take things that we do, that take 100 clicks, and we can reduce it to 3 and sometimes 4. So all the data crunching and stuff we do is done basically on off-the-shelf open source software.
There's a hybrid egg and an
Both of them did it. No, that's not an anomaly. That's actually very, very common. This is 30-inch systems. And one of the things that we notice is, depending on the variety, somewhere, this is the lowest we've seen it. But this saddle right here is actually very, very common. We see this 60 to 80% of the time. There comes a point where you crowd a little too close together, they react negatively. And they react negatively by giving up air cells. And in many cases, they actually react by aborting the upper air drop in a second. We've actually seen this, measured it, we've actually made it happen. This saddle is not an anomaly, it's actually normal. What's abnormal about this study is that's the lowest population where I've seen it. We typically see that saddle 34, 35, 36. There comes the point where we crowd them together, they're giving up air cells. There also comes a point where we can't feed them good enough. And so we give up a little bit of ear size on the front end, and then we increase the premature death on the back end. And that makes it harder for us to maximize for you. But no, that's not an anomaly. That's quite common for us. That's one of the things. You've ever seen population by corn yield results? They always got this beautiful diminishing returns curve. It's not what we see. If you look at single hybrid, single location, multiple populations, you see a pretty linear response and then a hiccup. I know that's a scientific phrase, but where it drops back about 6 to 8, 10%. And then it starts going linear again. Now, we think there's a second hiccup up there somewhere around 45,000, but today we've never been able to feed a population well enough to see it. But that hiccup is very typical. The problem is, depending on the environment and the variety, that hiccup might occur at a higher yield or a lower yield or a higher population or higher yield. You blend all those things together, dump them in a bucket. Now you got this beautiful diminishing returns curve. That accurately shows you the relationship between population and yield, but it gives you absolutely no guidance on whether you should plant thicker or thinner, which is the whole purpose of the exercise. That's the failure. When we started looking at all this data, we said, we're going to surface the data, we're going to dump it all in the bucket, and we're going to run correlations. We worked on that for about 3 years in the 90s, and basically figured we were going absolutely nowhere, really fast, and very costly for us. The best correlations they're getting are running around 0.3. What does that mean? It means 70% of the time that data has no impact, or that variable has no impact on final yield. So what we do is different. We measure, if we think that 33,000 is the right population, what we do is we challenge it in hundreds of locations with a 36 and a 30. And then we do simple math. How many times did 36 make us more money after we paid for the extra seeds? How many times did 30 make us more money after we saved the cost of the seed? It's a simple process. It's a little tedious. But once we learned how to do it on off-the-shelf freeware, it became doable. The other thing we do, our clients can have the same program on their computer that we use on ours. How do we transfer data? We don't have to import anything or reformat anything. We take the client as it exists on our computer, we copy it to their computer. They go into each field, they open up the project file, they see that data exactly the way I left it. There's no imports, none of those headaches. Now, this was not us being brilliant. This was us suffering the pain of buying a lot of very expensive programs. The first GIS program for agriculture I bought was $7,500. It makes me so angry now, I almost can't say it. And it cost me $900 a year to be able to maintain one seat. We rapidly got to the point where I might need 4 or 5 seats of that thing all year, and I might need 15 during the busy season. And I couldn't do it. So we tried some other stuff. We finally settled on Q, because we can, if I need 10 extra seats for the busy season, we download 10 extra seats. We do send them a donation every year to keep the thing going because it's important to us. But that's voluntary. You can use it some of the time. And the other thing we hated about everything, once we made the decision we were going to a different program, exporting all the data out of that one and importing it and reformatting it into the other one, that becomes a major process. Times 200 clients, times 12 or 15 fields per client. Now you've got a major undertaking. Q uses all standard file structures. It'll run on Mac, it'll run on Linux, it'll run on Windows. And it'll do anything else with it. So this gets interesting. Where was my most profitable yield? Right here. Where was my least risk of drought stress? Right here. Where was my least risk of disease and premature plant death? Right here. Now let's look at it another way, because the question was, can we raise 9 to 10 bushels per thousand in the Midwest? This is yield in bushels per thousand seeds. Okay? 28,000 seeds, I'm raising 10.86 with one hybrid, 10.6 with the other. 32, 35, 40. Where's my best return on investment for my seed purchase? Could I have gone lower? Can I get 11 bushels per thousand? Don't know. That's the problem with agronomy. When you make a mistake in a test, guess what? You got to wait an entire year. You can't run back into a lab, set it all up, and run it again. You get to try it again next year. And I'm 60, okay? I only got so many at-bats left. We got to get faster and quicker in this game. I got a couple guys with gray hair like mine. We became more valuable recently, though, in the area of weed science. I got invited to speak at the Penn State crop conference for the simple reason that I was old. They're out there, and they're all of a sudden in the Delmarva area, southern Pennsylvania, Maryland, they're going to raising a whole bunch of non-GMO beans. And somebody said, how are we going to control weeds in these non-GMO beans? And somebody says, we need some old guy that knows all this stuff they did 30 and 40 years ago. A friend of mine was there, and he said, I know the guy. We just dusted off another 40-year-old herbicide this week and started working on how do we fit it into our program. And so that's one of the things my partner works on very hard. How do you take 30-year-old generics and come up with a mix that will control your water hemp and reduce the risk of making things more resistant to more stuff? You saw earlier, we got water hemp resistant to 5 groups and we only got 3 left. So we're learning to be really, really careful with those other 3. You're either going to chase kernel weight or you're going to chase kernel number. But you can't really do both. You got to pick. If it's a rented field, you got limited fertility. You don't know how long your lease is. You're not going to buy a whole bunch of commercial fertilizer to raise soil test levels on a field that you don't know if you're going to have more than a year or 2. So maybe you go to a more flexible variety. You go to. The other problem you run into is a very high percentage of the nutrient issues that you run into are driven by mobility issues in the soil and not concentration. The downside of soil testing is it measures a single variable, that's concentration. Nutrient deficiencies are caused by 3 variables: concentration, location, and mobility. And the ones that we're battling the most right now, probably potassium is the biggest one. It's almost exclusively driven by mobility. Some soils, potassium is quite mobile. Other soils, it's not. We've got fields where we've got 300 parts per million of potassium. We should never see a response from banned potassium, and yet we do on a very, very consistent basis. We also have soils where we only have 100 to 130 parts per million of potassium, and they should respond like gangbusters to potassium application. We can't do that. Your nutrient mobility and your plant nutrition is a very, very local issue. pH, residue management, drainage, tillage system, how rapidly you're recycling your organic matter. All those things affect these mobility issues, and they're incredibly local. We have a few guidelines we've developed to say, yes, we probably have a problem, but we have to actually measure that problem on a given field to know. And as we start going to today's hybrids, the big variable that we need to master is plant nutrition. Why are we not getting 500 bushels out of a 500 bushel hybrid? In most cases, because we didn't feed it effectively. And doing this right is not easy. It's not just you dump a jug of this and a jug of that and go out and spray it on the field and everything gets better. It's not that simple. Good plant nutrition takes homework, it takes time, and it takes study. And it's expensive. There's no cheap way to do good plant nutrition. But it's critical, because if we can feed them better, they'll do better. We're funneling this thing down to where the 3 variables that are left are water, sunshine, and plant nutrition. Our hybrids are outrunning our abilities in those 3 areas. Our planting techniques and our farming practices are outrunning our abilities in those 3 areas. So we focus a lot on plant nutrition, not to maximize yield, but to make money on that investment. Fertilizer is an investment you make just like everything else. It's no more important than weed control or tile or dryer capacity. You put your money where you get the highest returns, because then you have more cash to solve more problems. How do you survive an economic period by the 80s? You're very critical to invest in things that have the highest potential for revenue, and everything else has to wait. So, kernel weights are now a more critical part of your final yield, higher this year than we've ever seen. Then it brings us back to the whole idea, are we losing money by drying in the field? Purdue said yes. Iowa State just recently said no for the 2nd year. Nebraska did some work on this years ago. Their answer was no. Our answer is it possible that as yields go higher, losses from field drying get greater? That's the question we're chasing. We have clients that have committed a large amount of money to drying systems. They swear by it. I'm on the fence. I think it happens in some fields. It doesn't happen in other. I think there's a yield component and a hybrid component. And that makes it very interesting. I was very interested in the gentleman's discussion about using the multi-hybrid planter because we have a client working with that. One of our challenges is how long does it take us to understand the hybrid that well to where we know whether to put it on the good ground and back down to the high pH and low pH. And how long are we going to have that hybrid? Because right now it takes us about 3 years for us to figure out how to use that hybrid, about 3 years for them to replace it with new. You know, we're chasing another thing. What's the optimum yield per bushels per 1,000 seeds in a given variety? I'm pretty independent. I like it that way. If I accept an opportunity to speak at a meeting, I'm very clear that I'm going to say what I think. It may not be popular with some people there. I spoke at a seed meeting 2 weeks ago. They listed 7 of their best hybrids, and they showed on every one of those slides, it says it's fairly flexible to push populations for maximum yield, and I come up and hit the audience with that. We didn't have to do CPR and one of the seed reps, but we made it. I'm not pushing high populations, I'm not pushing low populations. But you need to decide to push one or the other, because you can't really do both. And you may have fields within your farming operation where going low is actually a better deal, and on some of them going high is a better deal. Then there's a hybrid component too. When we start looking at field loss, drying, there's a hybrid component. Now we're like everybody else, we are still crunching numbers. There's a whole lot of data we collected in 17 that we don't really understand yet, and we haven't really processed to the point where we know what it means. This was a study done by one of our clients in Bloomington, Illinois. We planted 12 hybrids in 16-row plots. We went in and harvested 8 of those 16 rows on the 28th of September at 21.7% average moisture. Then we went back in and we harvested on October 21st at 16.05. We weighed everything. All of the hybrids averaged a 1.85 bushel per point of drying in the field. The highest loss was 24 bushels, the lowest was 0.6. What I can't do here is I can't segregate how much of that's head shed or ear dropping on the ground harvest loss conditions. How much of it is a drop in kernel? So we added another dimension to this. When we went in here and picked on the 28th, we went to these 8 rows and we harvested ears. And every time we harvested an ear, we tied a piece of surveyor's ribbon around that, came back in and we picked the second batch and we harvested the ear off the next plant. Those ears, as soon as they were harvested, were shelled. We cleaned them, we ran them through a seed counter, we counted out lots of 1,000 seeds, and then we weighed them and converted them back to 15%. What we're showing on average of 16 or 12 hybrids, this average yield loss of 1.85 bushels per point, we can identify 1.5 of that was kernel weight loss, not head shatter and harvest loss. And it gets interesting when we start looking at specific hybrids. The top 3 losers dropped 21.6 bushels and 4.6% of moisture dried. That's 4.69 bushels per point of dried on the field. The bottom 3 only lost 0.14 bushels. Is there a hybrid difference? We think so. How long is it going to take us to figure that? That'll probably happen the year after that hybrid's no longer. That's why we're putting together this group and building this system so we can learn this stuff quickly. What was interesting is the hybrids that lost the most, a lot of them had the highest yields. The hybrids that lost the least, the yield didn't change very much, but the yield wasn't all that high to begin with. So is field loss, or is kernel weight loss from drying in the field a bigger issue in a higher yielding field? I wish I knew. Every year I run a bunch of tests to answer a bunch of questions, and at the end of the year I have a few answers and one whole lot more questions. And that's actually a blessing. I've been doing this for 39 years, and I have not been bored one moment in my entire career. And I can name a lot of people I went to school with who can't say that. I have a ball every day. I have so much fun. My wife's thinking, you're probably better off not retiring, because I don't want you around here being bored, because you wouldn't know how to handle it. Okay, that works for me too. So we're finishing up our analysis on the kernel weights, but again, some of those fields, just in loss of kernel weight, we're picking up 16, 18, 20 bushels per dry. Other hybrids, it's not there. Now we've got kernel weight analysis that we did on 3 locations. One of them was Pella, Iowa, the other one was Oakville, Iowa, the third one was this location in Myrna, Illinois. If you know it. All there is in Myrna is a tavern, but it's a really good tavern. One of the better cheeseburgers in Central Florida. Now, this has become a big deal. Potassium mobility in high populations is something that we've been struggling with for quite a few years. You need roughly a 2% concentration of potassium in a B6 cord plant. You need roughly the same 2% 3 to 4 weeks later when you're now looking at a BT cord plant. How many total pounds of plant mass have you increased in that field? You have to deliver a ridiculous amount of potassium to that plant between B6 and potassium. If you don't, it will cannibalize the stalk, it will shorten the plant's life, and it will shorten up its cones. Some fields will let you do it, but the problem is potassium mobility is sensitive to several things, a big one being soil moisture, especially in the clay soils. Clay soils dry out, cable mobility comes down like a meteor. Temperature and oxygen appear to be very tightly tied to potassium mobility, which is how I can find fields with sky-high soil tests and I still have a potassium mobility problem and I'm getting a response by banding or applying potassium. And then I can find fields with ridiculously low potassium tests and I can't buy a response. In one field we got mad. We actually put 1,200 pounds of potash in part of the field. 6 years ago, on a field with an average of 100 to 120 part per million K tests. We're still looking for that spot to show. We did 800 pounds going this way, 400 pounds going this way, made a great big X, and in the middle of the field there's a diamond-shaped area of about 3 acres where we put on 1,200 pounds of WO6. 6 years ago. The grower asked me, why the big X? And I said, because you know how many satellites are looking at this stuff? Someday all of a sudden they said, what's this big X? And there's going to be all kinds of theories about aliens, that's where they're going to land and all this stuff, and all this. And I've been terribly disappointed because we've been taking satellite pictures on that field for 6 years, we can't see our big X. In a field where we knew we had soil. So K is mostly a mobility issue. And here's the problem, buying fertilizer and cranking up the soil test level on a field that predominantly has a mobility issue is money being drawn. So what we're looking at, rented ground, high clay content, high mag to K ratio, places where we frequently have problems with potassium. Should we go to a more flex hybrid, go to a lower population, not suck up so much of our potassium into things we don't get to soil? So that's one of the list of 100 or so challenges we're going to wrestle with this year. What about soybeans? Population, nutrition, and space, but we just threw one big wild card into it. We're now looking at an indeterminate crop. How big can a soybean plant get? Well, how much time, how much room, how much resources are you going to get? One group we work with is a seed company, and they're going to have a big soybean contest. And we've been thinking about this for a while, but take a soybean, put it in flower bed. Mulch around it, water it, keep the deer from eating it. How big will that thing get? We had a guy raise one this year. I got a picture of it sitting in the back of his truck. I said, you know, you ought to just take that thing in the house, put Christmas lights on, and it'll save you the $60 for a Christmas tree. They will get big. They're limited by space, time, and resources because they're an indeterminate crop. Soybean has no idea how big it wants to be when it grows up. It's just going to see what it has to work with and run with. So this is a totally different animal. And there's lots of data out there that says soybean populations maximize yield at 125,000. We haven't been able to see that. So I'm going to skip through some of this stuff just for time's sake. What's our big yield limiting factor in beans? We think it's this. How many pods are we dropping on the ground? Even in 80 and 85 bushel beans, we're dropping lots of pods on the ground. Our assumption is because they ran out of a critical resource. So now we're thinking about the same thing. How many pounds of those critical resources are now tied up in things that I don't get to sell, like extra stems, all those things. So we started playing with soybean populations. One guy said, this picture is not vivid enough, John. You need to spice it up. I said, what do you think I ought to do? He said, do this. I guess that has more effect. I'm not really like a video producer. So we've had a dramatic increase in seed costs and a dramatic decrease in seeds per bag. Anybody remember the 750 John Deere drill? State of the art, right? On the bottom half. The top half, 1930s seed metering system. But life was good. We were dropping 250,000 seeds with a John Deere drill for a couple of reasons. One of them was they were expensive. You needed a 30-foot John Deere 750 drill, but you couldn't afford it, so you had a 15 and you ran it 12 miles an hour. Then you had to put a harrow on the back of it because you figured out the harrow's planting more seeds than the drill actually is. But 60 pounds of seed beans was $18, right? We're fine. The assumption's always been that beans don't respond to precision planting nearly as well because they're indeterminate and compensate. Everything we've done in the last 4 years is telling us that that's a failed assumption. It's wrong. Beans aren't quite sensitive to plant erosion. And if they're crowded on one side, it affects the growth rate on both sides. So spacing has become quite good, or needs to become much better. And so there's a lot of stuff in here I want to skip through, but I want to get to this stuff. 100,000, 160,000. 60 bushels, 58. 80,000, I'm sorry, 85, 100, no, 80, 100, 120, 140. 72, 73, 71, 72. All the data in the industry says you get maximum yield seed in 125,000 soybeans. We just can't make it happen. And I've got the same failure in this year's test that I had in last year's. I didn't know more. We went to 50,000 seeds in some fields. We did 30-inch rows, 15-inch rows. As long as they're planted at a reasonable date and the spacing is good, we didn't go more. I looked at 2 fields in May of 2016. 20-inch bean field near Oakville, Iowa. 8 years of continuous corn, 7 years of hog manure, irrigated, dark prairie soil. The guy planted them. He had all kinds of problems with herbicide injury, frost, cold, heavy rain. I'm out there the last week in May. He's got 56,000 plants in his champion, supposed to be 80 bushel bean. And my question that he was asking me is, do I feel bad? I said, no, I wouldn't. And you could see him just cringe. He's like, John, 8 years of continuous corn, 7 years of hog manure. This has got to be an 80 bushel bean. I think he's got just as good a chance of doing it if you leave. That field scaled 81 bushels. 56,000. With another field in western Illinois, down south in western Wisconsin. 15-inch rows. Sub 60,000 population on the last week of May. Scaled in the 80s. So we don't know how low we can go yet, but I am committed to one thing. We've got to place them correctly and space them accurately. Because you can't be crowded on either side of them. Modern soybean varieties are a lot like modern corn varieties. They can do amazing things. But if you crowd them, they start dying off. If you crowd them, they get weak. And if you crowd them, they waste resources. This is 2 typical plants out of 80,000, 100,000, 140. Now, since I'm totally out of time, and all this stuff is in your slides and you can get it, I want to go to one thing. This is 6 feet of soybean row, planted in a high population in 15-inch rows. How much of the yield in that field is coming out of the top, 1/3 of the canopy, and how much is coming out of the bottom? How many plants do you see there that are producing little or nothing? They sucked up resources. There's a bunch of plants out here, all they did was suck up the resources that would let this plant keep a few more pounds. So one of the things we're working very hard on, and I would urge you to work hard on, is how are you allocating resources within the field? The parts of the plant that you need to sell versus parts of the plant that you don't. Do I have time to take a couple quick questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes?
Okay, on that slide right there, since it's up, plants that are not producing any pods, do you think that's an emergency problem, or what can I do to keep that from happening in my field?
I can't tell you for sure what it is. I think this one is doing almost nothing. It's just crowding. I think bean sense competition almost as effectively as corn does. And what we're doing, if I go back to this picture, that's a B3 soybean plant. That appears to be when it decides how many branches it's going to grow. So I want them to have the space on both sides. Because the one thing we're seeing is if I crowd that plant on one side and leave it a big gap on the other, it reacts more to being crowded on one side than it does having a big gap on the other. That was the killer of the John Deere drill. It dropped 3 or 4 in a bunch. The 2 middle ones would get sick and die. The one thing we really noticed with the Deeres when we first started using it is how many plants we were losing in the middle of the season. And it was always the ones stuck in the middle of those groups. They were just starving for resources and sunlight, and then some disease jumped on them and out they went. That's why we went to 15-inch rows. Well, technology. That was a new term. All of a sudden, our seed beans were $42 for a 50-pound bag instead of 18 for a 60. 250,000 with a John Deere drill just wasn't going to work. We learned really quickly that with the drill, our surviving population in harvest was down to like 60% of our viable seed. As soon as we went to a 15-inch planter with some semblance of decent spacing, our surviving population in harvest jumped up to like 82% of the viable seed. And we paid for the 15-inch planter by seed savings just because Then I had to go through another psychological thing. I'm working with a bunch of guys that were dropping 250,000 seeds for several years. And I always get the question the same way. It's formatted something like this. It's like, what do you want me to see with this 15-inch planter that you convinced me I needed? When I left Illinois to take a job in Iowa in 1983, my clients down there gave me a plaque. And it basically said everything that went wrong on my farm was either God's or Lord John's fault. And unfortunately, they're probably accurate. So, you know, you tell this guy he used to plant 250,000 seeds. What do you want me to drop those? I said 140. And you can, I mean, modern telecommunications are wonderful thing. You can hear a human being cringe on the other end of the phone. And I can hear him cringe and he's like, oh, you think I can go that low? I said, no, I think you need to go to like 110. I just think I can get you to go that far in one step. Just trying to make it a little easier. When you run tests like this, all of a sudden now you're in a wicked position because the little voice in the back of your head says, all right, smart guy, what are you going to do with this? I didn't go low enough. We went down to 50 to 80,000 seeds in multiple locations across 3 states, and we did not trigger a yield loss of any measurable significance. What does that tell you? We did as well as we should. When you test, you got to create a failure on the high side and failure on the low side. You know where is the sweet spot. We didn't get the low side failure, so we don't know how low we can go. Now, you can look at a lot of data. Oh no, you got to see 125, you got to see 140. Take a hard look at how they planted them, if they spaced them. Take a hard look at data. I don't think you want to play low population beans until you get very good at spacing them correctly and getting them there. You don't want to play low population seed beans without excellent seed quality, without a little bit of fungicide seed treatment on them to make sure they come up. The later your planting date goes, up until this year, the data said if you plant later, you need to plant thicker. This year, here we go again. We got beans planted clear out of May 20th. 50, 80,000 to change it. Thank you. Any other questions? Yep. There's always a local condition that drives what you do. I'm the guy from out of town. Everything I need, everything I said today, if you try it on your farm, you'll try it on a very limited controlled basis where you can measure outcome. I see that everywhere I go. The worst thing you can do is go someplace else and assume that anything you know about crop production is valid, because it may not be. Some things transfer, but you got to go and find out. It's a very, very local game. So our business is built to help people understand how to read what they see in their own fields and make better decisions. With that, first of all, thanks to all the sponsors and the High Plains Journal for inviting me out. I had a lot of fun being here. Thank you for listening. Thanks for having me.